Once upon a time, in a village called Ako, lived two childhood friends, Emeka and Chidima. They were known by everyone for their unbreakable bond. They had been inseparable since they were children, and the villagers often teased them about getting married. Their connection was the kind that warmed hearts, yet they both dismissed the jokes with laughter. While Chidima came from a stable home, Emeka's life was much harder. His father had died years ago, leaving behind a mountain of debt that his mother struggled to repay. She made ends meet by frying and selling gari, but it was barely enough to survive. Emeka worked small jobs to support his family, but the income was meager. Their situation worsened as his mother grew frail and their debts piled. Chidima, with her kind heart, often helped Emeka in any way she could. She would sneak food to his house and assist him with chores. Emeka was deeply grateful for her kindness, but desperation loomed over him like a dark cloud. One day, Emeka's friend told him about a herbalist he had heard about, and that the herbalist could help him out of his financial issues, but it was for a price. Emeka's desperation led him to consider it. He decided to visit the herbalist, thinking he could explore the idea without committing to anything. The herbalist welcomed Emeka and revealed the horrifying cost of his assistance. The herbalist wanted a woman dear to him. Emeka recoiled at the suggestion, unable to imagine betraying anyone, especially not someone he cared about. He left the herbalist home, vowing never to return. But back home, the weight of his family's suffering passed heavily on him. His mother's cries, her worsening illness, and the crushing debt haunted him day and night. It felt like there was no way out. Eventually, desperation broke him, and Emeka decided to use his dear friend Chidima as a sacrifice to save himself and his family. For days, Emeka avoided Chidima, unable to look her in the eye. Her kindness only deepened his torment, but his growing despair silenced his conscience. When she brought food to his house one day, Emeka told her that his mother needed medicine from a herbalist in a neighboring town and asked if she could accompany him. Trusting him completely, Chidima agreed without hesitation. They walked together to the herbalist's house, chatting like old times, but as they entered, two men grabbed Chidima and dragged her to the back of the house. Her screams pierced the air as she pleaded with Emeka, "Please don't do this. Emeka, help me." Emeka couldn't stay inside the hut, so he sat outside, trembling, consumed by guilt and horror. The herbalist emerged hours later with a small bottle containing a dark shimmering liquid. Handing it to Emeka, he said, "Drink this and wealth will follow you. And remember, if you ever confess, you will run mad." Emeka hesitated, but he had already done it. He couldn't do anything to change what had happened, so he took the drink and went home. As Emeka got home, the weight of his actions crushed him. That night, he couldn't sleep. Chidima's screams and pleas haunted him. The next day, Chidima's mother came to Emeka's house, frantic because her daughter had not returned home. Emeka feigned ignorance and joined the search, questioning villagers and looking for her everywhere. Days turned into weeks, then months, but Chidima was never found. Her father, devastated by the loss, fell ill and eventually died. Emeka visited to console her grieving mother, masking his guilt with false sympathy. As he got home, he told his mother that he was leaving for the city, where a friend had found a job for him. That night, he drank the herbalist potion, because once he is in the city, nobody will question his sudden wealth, and so he left for the city. Immediately he got to the city, everything changed for Emeka. He became incredibly wealthy, owning supermarkets, shopping malls, and a car dealership. But despite his newfound success, he had no peace, and his heart remained heavy. Meanwhile, back in the village, Chidima's mother, broken by the loss of her daughter and husband, was walking by the river and broke down crying. She went into the river, cursing whoever had harmed her daughter and had brought this suffering upon her. She declared that the person would never know peace and would lose all their children as she lost hers. Years later, Emeka had gotten married, but tragedy kept hitting his family. Emeka's wife had had two miscarriages and had lost one child to a mysterious illness as a newborn. Now she had given birth to their fourth child and told herself that she couldn't lose another child. She called her mother to please pray with her pastor to know if anything was going on. Days later, she got a call from her mother. Her mother said the pastor had revealed that her husband had committed a terrible sin and he needs to confess. She spoke to Emeka about it and told him everything that the pastor had said, that if he didn't confess, that they were going to lose their child. Emeka dismissed it, denying everything, but his wife was not convinced, and their marriage began to crumble under the weight of his secrets. Emeka began seeing Chidima's ghost everywhere, telling him to confess and tell the truth. One very evening, Emeka was having a nightmare, and his wife woke him up, shaking him. "Emeka, wake up." The moment Emeka jolted up, she said that he had been having a nightmare and was calling out Chidima. Emeka sat at the edge of his bed, tired, sweating. His wife sat beside him and told him that if there was something wrong, that he could tell her, that they would find a way to resolve it together. And deep down he wanted to tell her, but he remembered the words of the herbalist. If you confessed, you will run mad. And he just told her that she shouldn't worry. He was going down to get water when he passed by his child's nursery and saw Chidima's spirit standing beside the cradle where the baby was sleeping. Emeka immediately knelt down and he began pleading with her for the life of his child. She turned around and looked at Emeka, her face showing anger, and she said, "Go to my mother and confess." The next day, Emeka told his wife that they were going to his village to resolve everything. When Emeka and his family arrived at the village, they went straight to Chidima's house to meet her mother. The moment she saw them, she welcomed them warmly, not knowing the pain they had brought. When Emeka knelt before her and confessed the truth, he wept as he recounted everything, the betrayal, the sacrifice, and his guilt. Chidima's mother was overcome with grief and anger. "You took my only child, my husband, my life. How can I forgive you?" she cried. Emeka's wife knelt beside her. "Please," she begged, "for the sake of our child, forgive him. The cause had already taken so much from us. I have lost 3 children already." Chidima's mother turned and looked at her and said, "If someone you trusted did this to your child, would you forgive?" The silence was deafening, but Chidima's mother relented. "For the sake of your child, I forgive you," she said. "But everything my daughters brought for you will be taken away from you." As Emeka left Adako's home, the words of the herbalist rang in his mind. "If you ever confess, you will run mad." And immediately, he ran mad, going about the village, tearing off his clothes. His wife and child left him behind, returning to the city to start over. Emeka's world disappeared overnight. This story reminds us of the dangers of greed and the consequences of our actions. Emeka's choices brought him temporary wealth, but cost him his happiness, his family, and his sanity. True prosperity comes from hard work and honesty, not from harming others.